I'd love to see OTs moving beyond that need to justify continuously what we do. I feel as OTs, we're so concerned about proving our worth rather than just knowing that what we do has value and owning it and not apologizing for it. I'd love for every OT to boldly hold that occupational therapist title first, to say, I am an occupational therapist. I might have other hats, but first and foremost, I'm an OT, without having to launch into an explanation of what that means, that that's okay. So I'd love to see us being brave and just moving past those conversations that seem to have been going on for years as to how do you explain what we do and how do you justify it and how do you prove it? Like, we've done that, lads. we just need to own it. Everybody else can catch up, but we just need to occupy that space where we are occupational therapists, and that's okay.
The proof is in the pudding, right? So often the people who have had exposure to occupational therapy and know it was occupational therapy are like, yes, I get it. Sometimes doing it or illustrating how we do it rather than explaining models that we end up with people with eyes glazed over by the buffet at the party. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Neek. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. I'm talking today with two Irish OTs who are living proof that you don't need to have your entire career path all figured out to build something meaningful. Áine O'Day and Jen Tresiak host the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast, and they've created diverse and interesting practices by embracing their multi-passionate neurodivergent brains and figuring things out as they go. Áine said she started her business because I don't really know what else to do. And now she's thriving, mentoring other OT business owners and running her own private practice. Jen shares the moment when she felt frustrated with her daughter for pulling her away from her work. And that became the catalyst for change to find more alignment with her values and priorities and the way she's working. These aren't OTs who mapped it out. They're people who pivoted after car crashes, felt like imposters starting their podcast, and learned to work with their brains instead of against them. We're going to talk about clinical supervision as real professional development, how to start a practice without all the overwhelm, and why getting help might be the bravest thing you can do. If you're feeling scattered, isolated, or like you should have it more figured out by now, this conversation is for you. This episode is brought to you by Jane, a clinic management software built to help you focus on what matters most, your clients. Building rapport with your clients is important during appointments, and that can be challenging when you're also trying to take timely and detailed documentation. That's why Jane built AI Scribe, my new favorite tool, to help you document important information without the manual note-taking. Yeah, I said it. No manual note-taking. It's pretty awesome. I've been using it for a while now, and it's been the thing that I've wanted my whole career. This feature transforms your session recordings into chart entries. All you have to do is review your notes, sign the chart, and you're done. And since security is top priority at Jane, AI Scribe was built securely in-house to be fully HIPAA and PIPEDA compliant. With a tool you can trust, Jane helps you spend more time on your client care. To learn more about how Jane can help you change the way you feel about documentation, head to meet.jane.app/documentation to book a demo or sign up. And if you're ready to go, don't forget to use my code VITALITY for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Welcome, Jen and Áine. It's really nice to have you here on the Brave OT podcast.
Hi, Carolyn. Thanks so much for having us in Canada this time rather than Ireland.
For those listeners hearing this, I recorded as a guest on the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast just last week. Who knows when all of these things come out, but it was fun to do a reciprocal conversation, and just after I traveled to Ireland.
Well, it's lovely to be here, Carolyn.
Thank you. Could I ask you each to tell us a little bit about what you do? Do you want to go first, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. My background is I'm a mental health occupational therapist. I've been an OT for 25 years now. I know I don't look it, but I'm also a mom. I've got two teenagers and one 10-year-old girl. And I work delivering occupational therapy interventions to people in my private practice. I supervise other clinicians in both public and private settings. And I also work with Áine. We're very involved in supporting occupational therapists and other clinicians actually to consider private practice as an option. So how to set up in private practice, how to sustain yourself in private practice. So myself and Áine have been working together probably for the past 4 years now on that, I'd say, Áine.
Yeah, it was during COVID when we did the first one. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I love that. Thank you. And Áine, please tell us a little bit about your work.
So, like Jen, I also do a complete mix.
Yeah.
So, my background is I'm an occupational therapist, and now I predominantly work with health professionals and people outside the health industry. So, I provide supervision for occupational therapists, and that's a real wide variance of people who'll come to me, different backgrounds. My background is that I have a PhD, so I have a real interest in research, real interest in children, adolescents, and adult health and well-being. So clinical supervision is one piece of the business that I've been doing for a long time. Then the other strand of the business is I provide coaching. So I went back and I did occupational performance coaching training myself and carried on and I'm now a trainer, an occupational performance coach trainer. But I also have a postgraduate diploma in business and executive coaching. So I provide coaching for, I would say, predominantly health professionals, but I do have some clients who would be outside the health industry. Engineers seem to like my style. I think that kind of like science-based, I tend to attract a lot of engineers, and then just people in the health industry. So coaching is another piece, supporting people in their practice and in business and their professional life. And then, like what Jen said, then that piece, then the other strand is around the joint work that Jen and I have done around actually being a private practitioner, the pragmatics of it. How do you set up? What do you need to do to resource yourself? So we've done lots of different trainings together around that, and we'll tell you more about the ones that are coming up.
Awesome. Now, in North America, the term supervision is a little less familiar than how I hear it in the UK, in Ireland, and Australia. Can you frame that for those listeners who might not be as familiar with that model?
In Ireland, what we classify as clinical supervision is the piece around mandatory competency in Ireland and the UK for your professional registration to qualify as an OT is that you have to engage in reflective practice. Okay. And I'm sure that's the same in Canada. But one way to do that is to reflect in supervision. So in clinical supervision, there are 3 core objectives. And the first one is to safeguard yourself professionally. And also it's a public safeguard mechanism. So to ensure that you're actually reflect on that you are working in line with your professional standards and responsibilities. The other core objective of clinical supervision is to support the supervisees or the clinicians' mental health and well-being, to make sure that we are well so that we can work. And that's also a professional competency. And the third one then is that we're staying up to date with professional knowledge and practice. So clinical supervision is a forum or a means to do that. Obviously, we can do each one of those pieces on our own, but clinical supervision provides the structure to do it. And there's lots of different frameworks around it and like models that we can do. So I suppose it's something that I'm really interested in. It's interesting in Australia, it's different. I deliver a course on supervision. And I delivered it last year for ZMI, Alicia Ward, her company. And I'm delivering it again next week, starting in Australia. So it's definitely something that is, I think, becoming more and more at the forefront of people's awareness to support themselves in practice.
Like I was just in Australia for the OT conference. And I picked up a great resource, actually, this Guiding Good Practice, a snapshot of OT, Australia's new professional practice resources. And in there's a whole section on supervision. And I was really keen to read more because I think about the services I offer to OTs, mainly OT and business owners, but this idea of supporting you in navigating your business, your career, yourself, your life, like all of the things, all of the emotions that come with it. How are we finding that fulfillment? How are we caring for ourselves? How are we watching out for burnout? And it's interesting because here in North America, we're less likely to use the term supervision for that type of support. We might talk about mentorship or something, but I find a lot of people are looking for those CEUs. And I love these models that I'm hearing from other places of supervision being an established framework, in fact, a requirement to do that intersection of personal and professional development.
Really important. And I think that looking at the different kinds of models is really helpful because depending on the stage of career you're at, you can look at different things. I use a lot the 7-eyed model, which looks at you as a health professional and your client and the relationship between the two of you, and then your relationship as a supervisor with your clinician, the parallel process that can happen within that relationship and with the wider context in which you're working in. So it helps us really look at the interventions that we're providing through lots of different lenses and make sense of what might be going on in a session. Because I think sometimes you're in the session and you're engaged with it, but actually being able to step out of it afterwards and look back and understand all the elements of what was happening is really useful. So having a framework to hang that on, I think, is really nice.
I love that. So in Ireland, are OTs tending to go out and seek out and pay for supervision? Is that a pretty typical thing that you would plan for as an OT?
Yeah, and you have to. So as part of our registration requires that we have, it doesn't specify how much supervision, but it does specify that we need that space. And so I suppose when people are working in public health services, there would be initially, I suppose people would be meeting maybe once every couple of weeks or every month as a new grad. And typically it would be every 4, 6, 8 weeks that people would be setting aside time to focus and to have clinical supervision with a colleague, usually at a different grade. And then for everybody in private practice, certainly ourselves and everyone I know, we would then seek our own clinical supervision, which might be a little bit separate to the business support, because that's also, the mentorship is also important, but that can come from anybody outside the discipline as well as in the discipline. Whereas clinical supervision is generally done with somebody within your own discipline or who's very familiar with the frameworks that you would use. And it's incredibly helpful just to have that space to focus on your practice and what's going on for you. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that. And if it's an occupational therapist that you might be providing supervision for versus coaching or mentorship, how would you define the difference?
So that's the piece then so in Ireland and in the UK, both governments have policies around supervision for allied health professionals. And if you're working publicly, you have to align with that. And private practitioners will as well. So I suppose in coaching, it is all about that the client comes and they set their own agenda. You know, there is a slight difference in supervision, because in supervision, and you'll see lots of similarities in coaching and supervision. We always contract to go, what are we signing up for? So the really important piece is, when you see the difference, is that when you take somebody on as a clinical supervisor and you are contracting really clearly with them, and we have to meet these core objectives. So I may ask you questions about them. And if I have any concerns about how you practice, I'll say that to you and I'll talk to you about it and I'll mention it. But I have a legal and an ethical responsibility that if I have any concerns about your well-being in order to work safely, or your practice, be it publicly or professionally, as in that it's going to impact the public or it's going to impact the profession, I have to report that to CORU, which is our health regulator. So that's legislation. Okay. So when you take somebody on as a clinical supervisee, you take it on with a lot of legal responsibility. And I think it's really important to be aware of that, because if a member of the public puts a complaint in about a supervisee, And I've certainly supported people through this in my supervision practice. If they put a complaint in, that will go to Cora, and Cora will then evaluate and work through it. And you may be asked as the supervisor to complete a supervisory practice report. You may also be called to give evidence in court with regard to that supervisee that you're working with. So you have to follow that piece around due diligence. You've got vicarious liability or indirect liability because you knew about it or you withheld information. So you have to treat your role as a clinical supervisor the exact same as you would treat your role of your professional standards when you're working with any member of the public. And that's a hugely differentiating characteristic to coaching. Because when you're coaching somebody, we're not bound by this professional standard of practice standards of, and if you do not work in line with your professional registration, you can lose it. So the stakes are high. It also means that as a clinic, sorry, I'm talking a lot here. I'm going to let Jen interrupt.
You're absolutely right.
But it also means too, as a clinical supervisor, and I would see this for both Jen and I, we would be involved in a lot of our own professional development. So we talk about different courses and what you think of that one and would you go on this, and because you have to stay up to date with your knowledge in your practice. You can't be a supervisor and sit back and think, oh yeah, sure, I'll just help them reflect. You've actually got to help them to meet those 3 core objectives. So that's why you can't just pick a reflective practice framework. It's like what James was talking about, the 7I model. You have to look at this from all angles. Is your practice having an impact because of the way you look at things?
You're identifying gaps potentially, whereas I guess with coaching, you're not necessarily, well, you might be, but I suppose you're more directly asking those specific questions to hone in and really explore, is there something here that might be missing, or that might be something that we really need to work on, or that we need to develop as a clinician? And I guess we all have those blind spots, don't we? You don't know what you don't know, particularly early out, but all the way through. And practice is changing, evidence is changing, and it can be challenging to keep up to date with those changes. So supervision is a mechanism then to make sure, that you're talking through with somebody to see, are you spotting what you're not doing or what you could be doing differently, or evolving your practice as you develop as a clinician?
I think that's really important because and I find in private practice, we can really get into our own little silo, our own groove, and not have a lot of contact with other professionals or other OTs, and really not see what we don't see, and can get spin out and get stuck on a worry that if you were in an office, you might just talk to the OT at coffee break and go, oh, I didn't think about it that way, like a 15-degree pivot, and it looks entirely different. And so being intentional about seeking out reflection, communication, connection with others who are doing maybe similar things, maybe something different, but somebody to bounce these ideas around with. So you can, that helps highlight where you might be stuck in your thinking a little bit, or limited in your knowledge or awareness.
It takes so much more effort to find things out. When you're working in a small practice or as a solo clinician, things don't get handed to you. If you're working in public health services, you get a memo from HR or from somebody higher up that says, oh, did you know this new piece of legislation came in? Or did you know you have to do this training? And it's fed to you, it's easy. But then when you're a standalone clinician, nobody's telling you that. So you have to go out and seek it out, which is so much more effortful. And there's the risk of things being missed. So I think it's really important to have that person in the profession who you can share, or a group. We've got some really nice networks here of private practitioners who are WhatsApp threads or whatever. And we're making sure that everybody is staying up to date and is aware of what's going on.
Yeah, that's really good.
And when you say that, Jen, what resonated with me there as well is, there's all the legal stuff that changes, that it's lovely to have a safe space that you can ask a supervisor, or if you didn't know about it, that because you've got that, there's such a trust piece within that supervision relationship. But it's the same with evidence or professional knowledge. Like we all know, you pick up any paper and they'll talk about the knowledge to practice gap, and it's about 18 years. So if it was a new mental health treatment, and I know Jen works in mental health, and I know she is brilliant on all of that knowledge of what's topical, what's current, what's most evidence-based. But when you think about that, then supervision is a real place of where we support clinicians to do that. Because we often go on courses and it's really interesting. But then, it doesn't matter whether you're public or private, where do you have this space to think about, but how am I going to genuinely actually do this in practice? Which client will I start with? How much of this intervention can I try? As in, do I feel competent to try with? How much time have I got to practice this new skill or technique or approach? Does this match the client's needs? So it works both ways. Sometimes we come back from a course and we're trying it on everybody because it's our new toy.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. We come back and we just don't have time. So we're like, oh my God, course was amazing, but I just never got around to actually embedding it. So it really helps with knowledge translation, I think, as well.
Yeah. And integration. Yeah. Integration into your practice versus, passive learning. Stick that on a shelf with the other courses you took.
DVD cert.
Yeah, totally. We've all got our folders.
Yeah.
I'm a bit curious. Something I noticed as I listened to you each describe your work and read through your profiles, and something that was really familiar is all of us are doing a smattering of different types of work. We've got these really diverse practices, doing some of this and doing some of that and doing some of that. And I'm curious, what led you to working in this way? And maybe we can all share how we ended up here doing this very interesting and variable work.
I've always been drawn to new and emerging areas of practice. So when I looked back over my CV, as it were, I started in kind of mainstream mental health wards and that kind of thing. And then when early intervention in psychosis was a new thing, I was one of the first OTs going into that in my NHS trust. And then when there was a new kind of supporting people from welfare into employment, that was new and shiny. So I was drawn to that. And my oldest daughter has got ADHD. I suspect I've got an ADHD brain. Certainly I like moving on to new things. And once I've got something established, once I've set something up and I'm kind of running with it, I'm kind of like, okay, what's next? What's now? I always valued the work I was doing, but when it felt the same, when I didn't have a kind of a passion project or a bit on the side that kind of kept me afloat, I started to drown or to sink. So I need that variety within my work to help me deal with the less interesting, the more kind of standard day-to-day work.
I so relate. Yes, absolutely. I totally get that. How about you, Áine?
Totally relate to what Jen is saying. I worked in the UK for a good number of years and did pretty much that's why I say I'm an occupational therapist. I don't even try and brand anymore. But so I did everything, Caroline. I did forensic mental health. I did adult neurology, hen therapy, community mental health, early intervention for young people to prevent hospital admission with mental health, and moved loads. But I always thought it was just because I just love moving. And 2 years and I was moved on. And then I moved back to Ireland and hadn't seen the pattern of my brain at that point. And took the only job really that was available, if I'm honest, the only jobs available in the area that I was in children's health. So I took a job working with babies to 5-year-olds. I'd never seen a baby. I had seen probably all the other populations. So I've always moved a lot and loved that. But I did, when I came back, I loved children's health, mental health, adults' health and wellbeing. But then I had a car crash and that really changed the trajectory of my career, because I was out of work for about the bones of 3 years and I had a lot of therapy myself and then couldn't go back to anything physical, and I had huge cognitive fatigue as well as physical fatigue. So that really shifted what I was doing and went down an academic route thinking I would go into academia. And did a master's, did a PhD, loved both of them, absolutely loved it, and realised I don't want to go into academia. So bit of an expensive learning, but I loved the PhD. So after the PhD, I finished just at the end of COVID, or kind of mid-COVID 2020. And then I set up in business myself, because really, if I'm honest, I set up in business because I was like, I don't really know what else to do. And there isn't the job that I see that I like, that I want to do. So let's give it a go.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I love that path of, I think education is never a waste, right? And you gained a lot in the process and learned a lot of outside stuff, but also expanded your way of thinking. And the outcome wasn't exactly what you thought it would be. But learning for the sake of learning is super exciting. Paying a lot of money for it, also another thing.
It is. And I think it's one of those things that, like, I genuinely have no regrets. I loved the PhD because it was in population health and health services research. So I was the first OT in Ireland to do it. It was so different. And there was a lot of health economics, population health in it. So really did learn. But I also think, gosh, like, it probably was the right thing because I'm still working in OT in a different way. And I wasn't ready to let go any of that. But for me, I think the big learning was that piece around knowing what I didn't want anymore. Like, academia is amazing, but it's a hard career. You work really hard in academia, publish, to teach, and all those other academic responsibilities. And for me, I think after COVID, it was like, I have worked so hard for the last 4 years, and life had changed so much with a lot of family grief and loss during that time that I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work a 50-hour week and try and it just felt, always striving. Yeah. And I've got that brain that, like, I would compete hard. Give me a challenge and by gosh, will I persist until I achieve it. So I knew it would be a bad match for me.
It was great though, wasn't it, for that kind of reflection? And that's, I set up during or just after COVID as well. But I think when I knew I needed a career change was I used to work for, not a career change, sorry, a career change of direction. I used to work for a mental health service for young people, and I was not doing huge amounts of work. I was managing the team, but it was very invested in it. And then same as yourself, Áine, I give 100%. And I got a call in work to say my daughter, one of my daughters at the time, had come home from school with a panic attack. And my initial kind of feeling, and I remember getting so upset about this afterwards, but my initial feeling was frustration with her that, oh my God, pulling me away from work, and we were in the middle of stuff and I was so busy. And I was driving thinking, oh my goodness, what has happened here? I have compassion every day in my work for the young people I work with who are similar age to my daughter, and I give them everything. And then when I get pulled away from that work from my own family, I was feeling this anger or resentment. I was like, that's not right. I need to change my trajectory here, because where are my priorities lying? So I think sometimes trying to get that balance when we give so much of ourselves in the work that we do can take away, and we have to take a step back and reevaluate and rebalance. And I think that it didn't happen straight away, but it did send me down the route of there has to be an alternative to what I was doing in the health service.
Yeah. Yes, that makes so much sense. I can relate to you guys in having that. There was that inner drive that I'm also multi-passionate and I have ADHD. And I didn't know that until my son was diagnosed well into my career. And I think I had my private practice on the side at that point, but we still had a part-time job and was doing a little bit of this, little bit of that. And ultimately, I ended up creating and adapting and adjusting. And every so often I do a reflection. What do I love about my work? Where is it feeling a little bit abrasive or not quite fitting the stage that my family's at? And what might I do? How can I use these skills or do a little bit less of the things that drain me and a little bit more of the things that energize and excite me, which is an ongoing moving target. Throw in a pandemic and some perimenopause and a kid with a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. And there's just sort of this resilience and adaptability, I think, that comes with having our own businesses. And not to say it's easy to just whip up a pivot. There's a lot of effort and reflection and trial and error and public experimentation that goes into venturing into new directions. But I can really relate to elements of things that you guys are saying there, in that wanting to continually evolve and grow, adapt to your family's needs, adapt to your own brain needs, and keep it interesting.
And I love Carol, because you often talk about ACT and how you bring that into the work that you do, and also your everyday, you live it. And I really value that, and I love hearing you talking about that in the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. For those who haven't heard that before, ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. And it's often thought about more as a psychological model, but really it's transdisciplinary, transdiagnostic framework that really fits nicely with our OT models. And it's a way of supporting people in being able to roll with challenging thoughts and feelings that can come up and maybe get in the way of our occupational engagement, or as the psychologists would maybe call it, behaviors aligned with our values. But really, to us, it's meaningful occupation. And all sorts of things come up for us personally and professionally or with our clients. So, having a framework of resources that are really compassionate and mindful and reflective, that create curiosity rather than trying to change the content of difficult thoughts and feelings, it's a model I really enjoy. And so it shows up in all the things I do. But there are so many pathways to the same, sort of thinking about different things we connect with and engaging in that ongoing reflective practice, checking in on what matters to us and reflecting with others, I think is really supportive in how we co-regulate, how we grow, how we remain intentional in the way we're living and working.
Yeah. It's really interesting listening to the two of you, because as you're saying that, I wouldn't have had at the time had accessed therapy that used ACT as an approach. I certainly could have benefited with it when the car crash. I look back now, even when you were saying it there, Jen, and it's that piece around, for me, there was no acceptance. There was no acceptance that even though like I had, when I say significant fatigue, like it was horrendous. But then I was that client that constantly like, I have a good day, so I do too much, so then you have 4 down days, because there was no sense of energy conservation, even though I'd trained like back in the day when we called it.
It's something we do for other people, not ourselves.
But not ourselves, because there was just zero acceptance there. Like I was just the worst client ever. I'd say it was a pain in the backside coming into people, because I just wanted to know, when will you fix me? And when will this be gone? Thanks very much. Like, you haven't solved my problems yet. But like, I look back and go, in all of that journey, I didn't have an OT. I had OT friends, and like, they can't OT you. They can a little bit, but not really. And it was because there was no connection with what was meaningful. All I wanted to do was get back exercise, get back working. I really missed that work identity. I wanted to get back doing things. And nobody was connecting any of that for me, like in a real gentle, compassionate way. And I remember the first person that did, my goal was that I would read 1 page of Harry Potter a day. So whilst I didn't accept that like I couldn't read much, it wasn't that bit of like it's being advice and forcing it on me. It was just more, well, just do 1 page and see how that goes and come back. So I think as OTs, like when I hear you talk about ACT, it's like that compassion, the acceptance, and helping people to like, what will you do? What's the little thing you will do? Not these big goals, but the real functional, purposeful stuff.
And I love how there was that kind of moment, right? There's this moment in time where you're like, the 1 page of Harry Potter. I find so I have a practical ACT for OTs course, but supporting OTs in a variety of ways. Often they're looking for a really big, can you give me a worksheet to work through all the things and give me the 10 things I'm going to do in that session? And I really try to impress upon people so often. And I ask my mental health clients at the end of working with them, what was the thing that was most impactful? And often they'll say things like that, when you said about the 1 page of Harry Potter, like something like that, something that to me was a bit trivial and transactional. It's in those moments. And so often it's like just the way we position a question or the way we reflect something back to someone where they go, oh, now I get it. And a whole bunch of doors open up because there's a connection made. But usually it's in small moments, not a worksheet.
Totally.
We had a lovely experience on the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast. In our first episode, we spoke to somebody who'd used occupational therapy services as a mental health service user. And he spoke about his occupational therapist and what he'd gotten from it. And his big thing was budgeting and it really helped. And we didn't know who this OT was at the time, but she contacted us and then came on in the second season. And what was really interesting is what landed for her. She was like, we did that, but I didn't think that was such a big deal at all. It was just one of a whole host of things. But like years later, that was the bit that he remembered. And it's different perspectives. And it's often not what you realize or you think is the big thing that actually lands.
Absolutely. Yes. Where I live in Canada, kids don't go back to school until the start of September, or somewhere right around the start of September. But I'm hearing from a lot of the OTs that I work with that they're preparing for their kids to go back to school in a couple of weeks. And it brings about these sort of new year, fresh start vibes, shiny new stationery and new pencil cases, and maybe a new outfit or two. With new beginnings, we're always thinking about those new schedules, new routines, how to set ourselves up for success. But then you get caught up in the daily rush and you feel like you're reacting to whatever comes at you instead of actively living with purpose. I created the Activate Vitality Personal Development Planner specifically for this moment. It's not another productivity planner trying to squeeze more into your day. Instead, it blends science and soul to help you build awareness of how you're actually spending your time, then move forward with intention. The planner starts with 2 weeks of just awareness building, no planning, just noticing what energizes you, what drains you, what are those magic moments when you feel exactly where you need to be. Then you use those insights to plan forward in a way that builds vitality into your everyday life. It's based in acceptance and commitment therapy principles, as well as all kinds of occupational analysis. So you're building psychological flexibility, practicing mindfulness, and creating habits that actually stick. Available in digital format for immediate download, or grab the paper version on Amazon if you love writing by hand. I like the hand part. I've got lots of colorful markers and stickers and things to make it really fun and engaging. There's a link in the show notes to learn more about the Activate Vitality Personal Development Planner. Now, you brought up your podcast. Would you care to describe your podcast to the listeners? I know there's been some recent transitions in how your podcast is going as well.
It started myself and a colleague, Aideen Rutledge. We felt that there wasn't any Irish voice in the podcasting field, and we wanted to highlight the value of occupational therapy, really, both among the profession and outside of the profession. So we started off just chatting to everybody that we wanted to chat to. So the first couple of seasons were quite random, but interesting. And then we kind of evolved and did a series on Aideen's area of preference, which is neurodivergent children. We talked to occupational therapists, but also parents, teachers, other clinicians who would be aware of OT. We did then a session on kind of teenagers and young adults, which would be my area of interest. And then Áine very kindly agreed to step into the breach. And the most recent season that's going out at the moment is around how do we encourage or support occupational therapists to be brave, as your podcast said, and jump into new or interesting areas of practice or follow their passions. Because I think both Áine and I would have seen occupational therapists who have fallen out of love with the profession a little bit. And, you know, when we talk to them, it's not really that they've fallen out of love with the profession. It's that maybe the practice that they're working in or the service that they're working in is constraining and is not what they want or need. And so we are supporting people to think, how can they use their OT skills and their OT framework in a creative or in a different way?
I love that. Yeah, a lot of similarities there. And I love how you evolved it over time, right? That there's this, let's jump in and talk to some interesting people and see what comes. And
we thought we'd do 6 episodes. And I think we're certainly on season 5 now. So definitely, it's been great. And do you know, even from a professional development perspective, I just love talking to people and I love finding out what drives them, what interests them. And, you know, talking to you, Carolyn, that's one of the pleasures of being able to just have a chat. When else do you have the kind of permission nearly to contact somebody that you've listened to or that you've heard of or that you admire and say, can we talk? So it's an absolute privilege to be able to do the podcast.
One of my recent guests, he said that so often we'll have a conversation and be like, Dang it, we should have recorded that. That would be helpful for other people to hear. And we get to do that. So yours is called the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast, right?
That's right.
Very relevant beyond Ireland as well.
Absolutely.
We hope so.
We've spoken to people in Australia, in America, in Ireland, in Dubai, in different places.
Canada.
Top of our list now. I know, it's great.
Have you seen any surprising benefits? Just thinking of how I've been surprised by the reach that my podcast, the Brave OT podcast, does not have a huge number of downloads or anything like that. It has opened up a number of very surprising doors. And so I'm a bit curious if you've had that experience where some things have surprised you about having a podcast.
Being contacted by different people and students has been a great one, and people who are interested before they've even started their undergrad, and undergrad students with kind of suggestions and ideas or questions, which I absolutely love. I suppose I'm fascinated when I look at the stats and see all around the world where people are listening. And I thought, oh, this is just going to be of interest locally. You know, a few of my friends might tune in and listen. And when you look at it, and it really is all over the world that people are listening from. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that one of the things that I love about occupational therapy is that we've got so much similarity across the world. We're a unified profession, and a lot of professions aren't. I'm on the CORUR registration board. I'm on the OT registration board. And it's one of the easier ones compared to the other disciplines, because we know the standards of education in occupational therapy, once they're aligned with WWOOFIT, are pretty much going to be very similar across the board. So it's much easier to get that alignment and to know that wherever you go in the world, you're going to have a similar experience with an occupational therapist. So then it's lovely with the podcast to know that there is that universality.
Indeed, yes. I've been finding too, I went to the Canadian Occupational Therapy Conference this year and then the Australian. And you know, I can think about many products of mine that I could put at the forefront that would make me money, recruiting people into my kind of signature program, Activate Vitality, or talking about my planner, or talking about my Practical Act for OTs course. But actually what's super approachable is to put my podcast out front. So I carried around stickers with me of the Brave OT podcast and put a little Canada flag because there was a sense of that was interesting to people. And I had a booth at the Canadian OT conference, which was interesting too, because people could just walk up. I'm not trying to sell them anything. I've got nothing to sell. And they're just like, oh, cool. What got you into podcasting? And we could just have a conversation, or what's your podcast about? And it's a way of bringing in people curiously and interested and building a relationship. In my podcast, I drop when I have products to sell or offers to share, but really it's nice to just put that relationship out front and have something that people are interested. Oh, I know podcasts. Tell me a little bit about yours.
Yeah. And it's great CBD, just listening to podcasts as well. I just love listening to podcasts, and find that there's OT Potential have done a really interesting one recently where they have somebody who's looking to go into private practice and somebody who was the AOTA chairperson or president, just talking about the process. And I just find it fascinating. Sorry, when you cut over you there.
No, do you know what? That's what I was thinking, Jen, as well. As like the exact same. It's like you can listen to a podcast globally, like be it whether it's in Australia, Canada, you name it. And there's such learning in it. There's such rich information. You'll always get a nugget of, oh, how they apply that information, how we do it. Like we give ourselves such a hard time about not using occupational therapy perspective language. But you listen to any OT talk and they'll talk about like engagement and like what they're doing. And it's, yeah, you really can learn from other podcasts.
Yeah. I think more people should start podcasts. It's a really great way to connect. What do you think people should know if they're considering starting a podcast?
You know what's funny, Carolyn? On our current season, we actually speak to a podcast manager about the process and how to try and take away some of the fear. Because I think everybody is, and to be honest, like when I started out with Aideen, we were, first of all, who do we think we are? Like, I really had imposter syndrome. Like, why do we think we should be doing this? And we were like, nobody else is. And we did. But terrified about saying something wrong, or about saying something that would offend somebody or upset somebody, or that wouldn't be the right thing to say. And you have to give yourself permission just to go and go, we're all human. You might get a little bit wrong, or you might kind of fluff the way that you say something, but sure, hopefully everyone who's listening is human too. So they're going to get it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really nice about having a level of vulnerability when you're talking and sharing that, rather than it being absolutely perfect and polished, because certainly I'm not.
Yes, I think it gives people permission to, I intentionally try not to over edit and leave in the fumbles, and just like in subtle ways to help normalize imperfection. But I do still, when I look at my stats, my solo episodes do a lot better statistically than my interviews. Yet when I sit down to do a solo episode, that's when all of my self-doubt creeps in and go, oh, yeah, who are you to say? And if you talk to 100 other OTs, they'd say 100 other things. And surely people are going to disagree. And have I read every article on that thing I was just going to talk about? Or, but in talking to others, like that natural discussion, that's what we do, right? We talk with clients, we talk about what comes up, we navigate it. And in doing so, it's easy for us to say, yeah, there's lots of perspectives. What's your perspective? What's my perspective? But there's something about sitting there by myself and professing an opinion that feels a little bit intimidating.
It's reminded me a lot when you said earlier, Jen, the parallel process and supervision. So where something's going on that we're repeating, like the emotional impact or the behavior, something that's going on in a therapy session. And stepping into the podcast was probably a little bit like that for me. People say that bit of setting up in business. There's that sense of that initial first year. Like my initial first year was like, my get out of jail card was, if it doesn't work out, I'll just work in Starbucks. Okay. So it was like nearly taking off any standards of them that I have to make this work. And then giving it a go when it works. All that bit that you have of being in business, of like private practice and all the ick that goes with it financially and everything else. And then with podcasting, it's like, oh gosh, I can't do that. I'm not technical enough. And I'm really like, I like tech. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not a good reader. As in, I obviously I can do it, but it's like I used to always blame myself going, oh, I just read really slowly. So I would say I'm not overly technical minded, but I'm okay. And then I was like, oh gosh, but there's 50 other people better than me. And then when Jen approached me, and I suppose because I know Jen well now, I was like, it'll be okay because I'm doing it with Jen. Because somebody's going to hold my hand and walk me through it. And it's nearly made me realize, oh yeah, when we do the how to set up in private practice course, we literally do all of the from the real baby steps of, you don't have to run a business. You can just step in gently. And for me, stepping into the podcast has been so lovely in that way because Jen has helped me to show me the structure and what it looks like and all of the pragmatics around it. So I think for people even thinking about it, OTs are very friendly. Reach out to people and get a bit of help.
Yes. And that's it with private practice, right? You can start by taking the client that comes up, right? And just that client helps you set up some of those basic structures that can allow you to continue. You need a way to communicate with them. You need a way to invoice them. You need a way to store information securely. You need some insurance. That's really about it, right? And it's, I love that translation of all of these baby steps, right?
We're good at grading activities.
For others.
Really simple way of grading activity for podcasting. Get in contact with Carlin or ourselves. Come on a podcast. Try it, and then we'll build it up. There's so many different ways to do it.
I feel like the test case, because Jen and Aideen very kindly invited me on their podcast last year, and I spoke about the dyspraxia research that I would have been involved in. So it was a really nice, oh, okay. This isn't as complicated as it looks.
Totally. And you guys record a batch as a season together and then roll that out. Is that how you do it? Can you tell me a little bit more about how you structure those episodes?
Yeah, that's certainly what we've been doing more by default. When myself and Aideen started that first season, all we heard from everybody that we just touched base with was, you have to be consistent, you have to do it continuously. And we were both kind of going, can't really dedicate my life to doing something every week or whatever. So we recorded, I think, 8 or something for that first, and we decided to then put them out. So then we had the weekly schedule because we knew we had them in the bag. And then we decided to do that again at times when we had a little bit more capacity in our work, in our private practices. We were able to say, okay, we can dedicate a couple of days or whatever amount of time to get a few together, and then we can ease them out over a while. And then actually the later seasons, we found it beneficial to record a few back to back on the same theme, because then we were able to really immerse ourselves in the kind of theme that we were exploring or we were looking at. And they kind of then supported each other a little bit. So it's been nice. And then we know that we've got a season, a block, they'll go out. And then when we've got a bit more time, we'll do the next one. So I know that's different to how you do it, which is more of a rolling program.
Kind of, right? There have been times where I haven't released an episode for months, but having Jane as a sponsor has helped me because I have an obligation to do one per month for them. I try to do 2 per month, but usually I can't do that without help. But consistency, I don't do anything consistently. So that advice of, well, it has to be consistent. Does it? What is the consequence? Here I am.
And I actually, because I follow your podcast, so every so often it'll just pop up, oh, there's a new one, and I'm like, oh, great.
And the intermittent reinforcement schedule is the most powerful one, isn't it?
You love it. Yeah,
absolutely. Like Meta, Instagram are making a fortune off of it. We go back in, there may not be something new, but maybe there is.
Indeed. And really, are people sitting there waiting for us and going, there's no podcast this week? Or,
oh yeah, they are. Dying first.
I feel like I'm not that important to people.
Jen told me that signing up now, this was going to be the making of my career. So, Carolyn, you're going to have to rein it back in here now.
Let's make our career. I love it. Let's give it a love. You know what? And it's been very surprising. And I know we talk about this on the podcast I recorded with you, that we're hearing of people who are using our episodes in university programs. And like, these are surprising things to me, that it's a way of learning that is approachable and comfortable and casual. And there's actually, I know of, seen videos, I've seen TikToks about AI that will take a chapter, like a university textbook chapter, and turn it into a podcast episode so that you can listen to it in a way that your brain is feeling more connected to it, because it's a little bit more conversational and relational, which is really interesting.
I like that.
You can do that on Notebook LM, and it is brilliant. As somebody who, I love audio, like I love podcasts, I love Audible. And the really nice bit of it is, in the past, when you listen to a PDF of a document, so you might try and listen to a research paper, like you just couldn't. There's no way your brain would stay engaged. It's so much better because actually, obviously, the AI bot is trained. So you get intonation, you get correct pausing. It's a game changer on listening to, for me anyway, educational content that I wouldn't always have time to read.
Notebook LM. So do you pay for that, or can it do that in a free version?
Oh, I add that to the multiple subscriptions that I have, Carolyn, which, I mean, as somebody who coaches people on, keep an eye on the amount of subscriptions you have in your business and watch if you're using them. Yeah. There's a little bit of kettle. Yeah, there's a little bit of the kettle calling the pot black. But no, I say that, but actually I do use those because I drive a lot with work. So I do a lot of driving at times. Yeah. And for me, that has been one of the biggest changes in business. Driving is no longer a waste of time. I could have 3 hours of CPD driving now.
I love it. You had mentioned at the beginning that there was an upcoming event or offering. Could you tell us a little bit about that before each answering the questions that come after?
So it's happening on the 20th of September in Dublin. Myself and Áine it's a private practitioner networking summit. So we have some representatives from CORU, which is our regulatory body, just talking about some of the challenges that they're seeing in private practice. We've got a panel of people at different stages of private practice. We've got people talking about cybersecurity, HR challenges and contracting, marketing. And we've got a whole range of people who support businesses coming to tell us about what they do, including Codex, who are an amazing furniture office supplier, but they are very much looking at neuroaffirming equipment in the workplace. So they've done a really nice report on the needs of neurodivergent people in the workforce and how employers can support them. So we're delighted to have them. So it's open to all OTs, psychologists, psychotherapists, physios, speech and language therapists, psychiatrists, anyone in private practice who wants to network and connect with other people, because we know it can be an isolating world, and we feel that the rising tide raises all ships. Let's all work together to support each other in practice.
And would it be suitable for OTs outside of Ireland?
Absolutely.
Especially
Absolutely.
because we've got a lot of exhibitors.
Okay.
So that piece around, when you, a little bit like what we said about supervision, when you don't know what you don't know. So actually you're thinking about getting somebody to do some contracting work, then connecting with somebody who works in HR. So actually, what do I need to know about HR? Do I need a full-time HR person? Can I contract HR and just buy in the package that I need? What are the questions that I need to think about? What are the things that I need to know about marketing? We often think about marketing, we just think social media, but actually marketing is so much wider. Thinking about accounting, thinking about cybersecurity, GDPR, that's relevant no matter where you work in the world. So I think having all of those exhibitors there and having an opportunity to be able to go around and talk to them. And they are also, we've got some people who are going to facilitate workshops for us. So you're going to have this chance to learn, network, and ask a lot of questions and find out things that maybe just were never on your radar.
The networking is so important, though. When we run the courses that we run, it is having the chance to share concerns or successes or questions with other people who are doing it. I think that's invaluable. And whether you do that online or face to face, but actually coming together face to face is a really nice opportunity. There's not many spaces, certainly in Ireland, for private practitioners to come together and share the realities of the work that we do.
And
Wonderful.
it can be so lonely on your own. Because you think, I'm just working all the hours in the sun. Is this me? But actually having that opportunity to speak to others, I think is just incredible.
Yes. Can you say the name of the event again?
It is the Private Practitioners Networking Summit.
Excellent. And we'll share a link for that in the show notes to make that handy for people to check out.
Yeah.
Can I ask you what being brave means to you? Áine, could you go first?
What does being brave mean to me? I think sometimes it means actually really for me getting help. Like when I say getting help, like truly stepping into getting help, because I definitely would have a tendency to crack on, work hard, find out, learn about it, research and do that. And sometimes I think being brave for me is stepping back and going, but actually, could somebody else help me here? Do I actually have to research it myself? Can I let that go and just outsource it and have the conversation with somebody else about it?
Yes, it's a good one. How about you, Jen? What does being brave mean to you?
I think being brave sometimes means just asking questions and maybe challenging some of the norms or the things that we just take for granted. Why do I have to work in this way? Or why do I have to stick to 9 to 5? Or why do I have to see somebody in a particular clinic or model? And just being curious, asking those questions, and being brave is then being open to the answers and being able to maybe change and evolve. I think that sounds straightforward, but it's definitely not always easy.
And in both of your answers, there's the autopilot where we just keep going. That's what we could do, and that's what we do for the most part. And it conserves a bit of cognitive energy if we're not pausing to think, should I do this? Can I get help with this? Could I do it? Is it required to do it different? Like that, there is an extra it is more effortful to pause, check in, reflect, hold up. What actually are the regulations on this? I remember I've talked about this on the podcast before. In my last job, you had to use a black pen. You had to write after every interaction. It had to be in SOAP format. Are any of those things actually required now here in my own private practice? Or does it need to be weekly? Yeah, there are so many things that does require a bit of effort to slow down and check in, reflect, and think, no, that's not necessary anymore.
Yeah. But it's that thing, some of the power, I think, too, for OT as well, is we know this science. We know that the brain is designed to actually not constantly seek new solutions because it'd drain cognitive energy. So we know that actually having somebody where you can talk it through with them and brainstorm and then get a fresh perspective and then choose the solution and break down the solution. That's just so... That's from a brain-based perspective, it's so much more appropriate and a better way of working scientifically. And we have the art of it that actually it's somebody doing it with you. And I think sometimes for me, it's not forgetting to do that on myself. Mm-hmm. That I actually don't forget to pull in the help.
Indeed. What is something brave you've done recently?
Setting up the networking summit was definitely something that it's a new thing. It's an exciting thing. So hopefully it pays off and it works. I'm exploring a technology solution option. So again, shiny new things, but taking things in a different direction and talking to people outside of my usual kind of OT healthcare sphere, being able to say what I don't know as well as what I do know that's a little bit brave. And I don't know whether it'll lead to anything, but I'm following the journey.
Very good. Áine?
There's a lot of similarity there, Jen. It sounds like I'm copying you. But I think it's that bit of working with people. So during the summer, I had looked at, we're still in the summer, looking at a piece of tech to see how we could functionally examine, at very easy, low cost, our executive functioning skills, because I'm really interested in that. And that's been really interesting, just looking at the tech behind it and how actually is it genuinely going to be used, and recognizing that it's never going to replace the human. So where's the added value? So at the moment I'm at the point of exploring it to see, can it truly add value? Or is it just something shiny and new?
So interesting. Yes, we could make many episodes too on how we're using AI and where that's valuable and where we need to be intentional about watching for risk and seeing some detrimental things coming up, and how do we embrace it and understand it so we can make sure it's doing well.
Totally. And I think that's the big piece for me. I could so easily get caught into it and think, oh, that's amazing. But actually, does it matter if I self-assess my own executive functioning skills via an assessment tool? We know that, really in practice, it's a bit about coaching the person through it. And when I say that, I'm occupational therapy or someone else working whatever approach through it. But also trying to rein myself in, because I just want to jump in and go, oh, I know it's going to be brilliant. It'll be amazing because it's tech.
Totally. It's exciting.
But actually, will it genuinely, as they say, generate any revenue? But it's exciting at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's brave to explore it and embrace it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good fun.
And I love that we've created these ways of working that makes room for these explorations and tangents and interests. I often think, wow, if I was in my last job working sort of 8 to 4:15, seeing clients all day, I wouldn't have energy at the end of the day to explore these things. So I appreciate the privilege, but also there's some intentionality that went into working this way for all of us.
Yeah.
Gives you the capacity.
How would you like to see OTs be a little bit more brave in the coming years?
I think really owning and articulating our value of how we help people to identify meaning and purpose, and that they are the core tenets of everyday life. Just the real ordinary, what is meaningful for our clients, where the purpose in their lives, and helping to articulate that we do it in a scientific way, the science and art behind it.
Yeah, it's not occupation for the sake of occupation, that
No.
without the meaning and the purpose, it's a bit empty.
I'd love to see OTs moving beyond that need to justify continuously what we do. I feel as OTs, we're so concerned about proving our worth rather than just knowing that what we do has value and owning it and not apologizing for it. I'd love for every OT to boldly hold that occupational therapist title first, to say, I am an occupational therapist. I might have other hats, but first and foremost, I'm an OT, without having to launch into an explanation of what that means, that that's okay. So I'd love to see us being brave and just moving past those conversations that seem to have been going on for years as to how do you explain what we do and how do you justify it and how do you prove it? Like, we've done that, lads. we just need to own it. Everybody else can catch up, but we just need to occupy that space where we are occupational therapists, and that's okay.
The proof is in the pudding, right? So often the people who have had exposure to occupational therapy and know it was occupational therapy are like, yes, I get it. Sometimes doing it or illustrating how we do it rather than explaining models that we end up with people with eyes glazed over by the buffet at the party.
Absolutely.
How would you like people to connect with you? So we'll have the link for the summit coming up, but any other ways you'd like people to connect if they are interested in exploring the podcast more or each of your areas of specialty?
Both on Instagram and LinkedIn as individual under our names. And then we do have an Instagram page for the Irish Occupational Therapy podcast as well.
Yeah. Or they can drop me an email. I'm good on emailing as well.
Write a letter, maybe send a carry of Jen.
I know, good old fashioned LinkedIn, Instagram, email.
I will share some links in the show notes for that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Carolyn.
Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
I keep thinking about what Áine and Jen said about being brave relating to getting help instead of trying to figure it all out yourself. These two are building something sustainable by working with their multi-passionate brains, not against them. They're creating the support systems that don't exist, starting podcasts, even when they felt like imposters, and proving that you can pivot and adapt without having it all figured out first. What really gets me is how they're normalizing the messy, non-linear path. Áine did a PhD thinking she'd go into academia and then realized she didn't want that. Jen felt frustrated in a moment of reaction to a family need, and that was a wake-up call. These aren't failures. They're course corrections that lead to something better. If you're feeling scattered or like you should have it more figured out by now, remember what we heard today. You can start with one client, you can ask for help, and you don't need to apologize for not following a traditional path. It's kind of boring if you ask me. All three of us are available to support you if there's anything we can do to help you figure out where you're headed from here, help you find something really aligned with your passions and your interests and your own brain and way of working. Share this episode with an OT friend who needs to hear that it's okay to build it as you go. Leave a review if this resonated with you, and come join us for more conversation in the Brave OT Facebook group, because Áine and Jen showed us having your people makes all the difference. As always, be brave, OTs.